everybody. My name is Sarah and I am Scott's wife, and it's so good to be with all of you guys for the lesson. I had a great time meeting you on the retreat and hanging out. And the nice thing about this virtual youth group is that I get to see you a little bit more. So today I wanted to start about talking about what is your most valuable possession. This is Dottie the cat. I don't know that she's my most valuable possession. She's more like a family member, but she's pretty awesome. Maybe your most valuable possession is your phone. I have a Pixel. I like it. Text, hang out with people, especially important. Or maybe your most valuable possession is your Nintendo Switch. I don't know. Think about it for a minute. If you could only choose one thing that you own to take with you on a desert island, and not for basic necessities, but just for fun, what would you take? Now I want you to think about your whole family's house. Do you have anything that is a family heirloom? Something that is been in your family for a long time? What would you say your family's most valuable possession is? Think about it. Talk about it. Do you have that pictured in your mind? Very cool. Well, the story that we're going to look at tonight is in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14. And it talks about a woman pouring out an alabaster jar of nard perfume. And we hear that and we go, that is really weird. I don't even know what nard is. And alabaster jar just sounds odd. But it's a fancy marble glass jar. And it stored precious perfumes. And they said that this jar of nard in the story was worth 1 year's worth of wages. So I just want you to know, as we're getting into this gospel story, that this was an extravagant, radical act of love for Jesus. It was probably this woman's most valuable possession. So we're in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14. I'm reading the Message version, which I like because it's just easier to read as a story. And it's by a guy who is a pastor named Eugene Peterson, and he translated it from the Greek and Hebrew. But he wanted to write the Bible in a way that the people at his church could understand it, just like the first people who heard it. So here we go. Anointing his head. In only 2 days, the 8-day festival of Passover and the feast of the unleavened bread would begin. The high priest and the religion scholars were looking for a way that they could seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. They agreed it should not be done during Passover week. We wouldn't want the crowds up in arms, they said. Jesus was at Bethany, a guest of Simon the leper. While he was eating dinner, a woman came up carrying a bottle of very expensive perfume. Opening the bottle, she poured it on his head. And some of the guests became furious among themselves. That's criminal! A sheer waste! This perfume could have been sold for well over a year's wages and handed out to the poor. They swelled up in anger, nearly bursting with indignation over her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why are you giving her a hard time? She has done something wonderfully significant for me. You will have the poor with you every day for the rest of your lives." Whenever you feel like it, you could do something for them. Not so with me. She did what she could, when she could. She pre-anointed my body for burial. And you can be sure that wherever in the world where the message is preached, that she just did is going to be talked about admiredly. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the cabal of high priests, determined to betray him. They couldn't believe their ears, and they promised to pay him well. He started looking for just the right moment to hand him over. And so that is the gospel story in Mark. Again, the anointing of Jesus' head with this very, very expensive perfume. And it's interesting because there's a lot we don't know about this story. Some people say the person who anointed Jesus' head was Mary, Lazarus' sister. You know, she was the one who was sort of the slacker who liked to listen to Jesus instead of helping her sister. Some people said the lady who did this was a prostitute. She was one of the women that Jesus had caught up in adultery. There's a story, and they're casting stones, getting ready to kill her. And he said, whoever's without sin, cast the first stone. And everybody walked away. We don't know this woman's name. It doesn't say in the Bible, but we do know that she loved Jesus so much that she was willing to give her very, very best to him, which is awesome. And it's interesting that contrast between this woman and the disciples, because she was willing to give her best to Jesus, to prepare his body for burial. Throughout Mark, Jesus is always talking about how he's going to die, and it seems like this woman's one of the only ones who's been listening. Jesus had several women who followed him. In fact, when Jesus was arrested, everybody ran away and fled, all the disciples. John stayed with Jesus' mother, Mary, and Peter kind of was off in the distance, but he ran away after he denied Christ. But it was the women weeping for Jesus, and it was the women who first found out about the resurrection. And again, she gave her very best. She spent a huge amount of money. And you might be saying, well, the disciples, they have a good point. We should help poor people. And I don't know if you guys know, I run a nonprofit and we do food pantries, free clothing closets. We help homeless folks, people who are struggling with addiction. A lot of people who come to my neighbor's place are very poor. And should Christians help poor people? Absolutely. That is like what Jesus says in Matthew 25, where he says, when I'm hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. When I was naked, you gave me clothes. When I was in prison, you visited me. Whatever you do for the least of me, you do it for me. And throughout the whole Bible, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, there is a command to always take care of the poor and provide for the poor and to give generously. So why is Jesus hating on the poor here? That sounds kind of weird, right? It's because they were missing the point. This woman was pouring out her love and devotion for Jesus, and all they could do was criticize her. In fact, in another gospel account of the same story, it says that Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus, was the guy who kept the money bags, and he would give out the money to the poor, the alms, but he also took a little for himself, and he held back. And so instead of giving Jesus his best, he was actually just in it for what he could get out of it. I mean, literally, he was taking money from Jesus in their ministry. And it's so interesting that after this is when it says in the book of Mark that he decided to hand Jesus over to the Jewish authorities. And so I love that the last thing that Jesus says in this gospel is that whenever the gospel or the message is preached about me, you'll remember this woman. And so I hope as we're moving into Easter and Holy Week that you'll remember what this woman did. Even though we don't know her name or much about her, will remember how much she was willing to give to Jesus, her very best, everything that she had for him. And I think when we're called to follow disciples, it's not about the warm fuzzies we get or, skimming money off the top or those blessings. God does bless us, but it's about what we give to God in worship and what we give to one another. Because the whole gospel is summed up in love God and love each other. And so there's an older song, and I'm going to put the link in the YouTube video link in the comments. And to close, I hope that you guys take a few minutes listening to this song. It's by an artist named Jennifer Knapp. It's kind of an old song, but it's a pretty song. And she actually writes about this story, kind of imagining it. In her imagination, the person in the story was a prostitute or a harlot. And she said, from glass alabaster, she poured out the depths of her soul. All foot of Christ would you wait if her harlotries were known. Falls a tear to darken the dirt of humblest offerings to forgive the hurt. She is strong enough to stand in your love. And I can hear her say, I'm weak, I'm poor, I'm broken, Lord, but I'm yours. Hold me now. Hold me now. And so I hope that you're strong enough to stand in the love of Jesus. And I hope as you listen to this song that you reflect and ask yourself, am I willing to give the best that I have to Jesus? Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. And I'm praying for you. Scott's praying for you. And have a very good Holy Week. And take care.